Hey guys, how's it going? Long time no see. So it's been about 4 years since I've made a video, so I think it's time to make another video. So it's currently 2020. Things aren't exactly the best right now, so I figured I'd make a cooking video to lighten the mood. And also because this is a recipe that I've been wanting to share. It's actually a ham and cheese sandwich. I know that sounds very basic, but it's got a little bit of pizzazz to it. So, you got two different types of cheeses, you got some really good ham, roasted garlic, caramelized onions on homemade Cuban bread. So I'm going to show you step by step how to make this, and I hope you end up making it, because even though it takes a while to make, it's totally worth it. So, without further ado, let's get started. So the ingredients are going to be put into the description box down below, so you can take a look at that to make things easier. Meanwhile, I am putting dry active yeast into my warm water and my flour in there to make the starter for the Cuban bread. Now, if you want to make this bread, you're going to have to make it the day before you eat it, because this has to sit for 24 hours. So I'm going to just wrap that up and put it in the fridge. The other thing you're going to want to do is drain the ricotta cheese, because nobody wants a soggy sandwich. We're going to get all the water out of there, and while your starter is sitting in the fridge, you're going to want this to sit in the fridge too. Just make sure you cover it and let it sit overnight. Alright, so it's the next day. We're taking our starter out, and as you can see, a lot of bubbles have developed. And now it's time to actually make the dough. So I'm adding sugar to my warm water and our dry active yeast. Going to give that a whisk, and that's going to sit for 10 minutes. And make sure that your yeast activates. If nothing happens in 10 minutes, pour it out and start all over again, because it means your yeast is dead. So now it's time to add our salt and our all-purpose flour. Once again, you can use all bread flour, but I prefer to use all-purpose flour for this because, I don't know, it just comes out better, has better flavor, has better texture, but by all means, use bread flour. Now we're adding our starter. And just go ahead and mix that up before we add the most controversial part of the recipe, and that is butter. Yeah, I'm using butter instead of lard, mainly because the first time I ever made this, I used butter because I didn't have any lard in the house. And since then, I've been using butter, and I think it comes out great. Gives it a nice flaky texture and some good flavor. Make sure it's unsalted butter. But it's up to you whether or not this is actually Cuban bread. I think it's Cuban bread, but if you don't, then that's just your opinion. Okay, so once it's too hard to stir, you're going to want to start kneading it in the bowl. And just add flour gradually at a time. You don't want to add too much, because it's much easier to add flour to a wet dough than it is to add water to a dry dough. You definitely do not want a dry dough, because it'll come out too dense and it just won't be good. So now we're going to switch to a floured surface. Once again, not too much flour. And we're going to start kneading. And when you knead, make sure you knead for about 10 minutes or so. Make sure all the gluten develops into your dough. And make sure that when you shape it into a ball, just give it a little poke and make sure it springs back at you. Now we're going to put this into a lightly oiled bowl with some olive oil. Just coat the entire dough ball before covering it with some plastic wrap. And when you cover it, I'd suggest putting it into an oven and make sure the oven is off. Please don't turn on the oven, because it's draft free and you don't want any air getting in there. And we're going to let that sit in there for 2 hours. Yeah, it takes a long time to make this, but 2 hours later, it should look like this. Beautiful. And we're going to just punch it down a little bit and put that on another lightly floured surface. and you're going to want to cut it in half. Now, this recipe does make 2 loaves of Cuban bread. I should have said that at the beginning. But yeah, if you want to make this, the ingredients that I'm using after this, it's only going to make 2 sandwiches, which comes from 1 loaf. So if you're going to follow this recipe and you want to make 1 loaf, just cut the recipe in half. Or if you want to make 4 sandwiches, just go ahead and double up on the rest of the ingredients. So you're going to want to roll this out, and we're going to shape this into a loaf. Make sure it's nice and flat. And go ahead and just roll it up. Now I'm going to show you how to shape the sides of this. Just go ahead and roll that up and do this on both sides. It's much easier to show it than it is to describe it. Okay, and then we're going to put that onto a tray that has some cornmeal on it. And traditionally cornmeal goes on the bottom of Cuban bread, so that's why I'm doing this. And plus, it gives it some good flavor. I do the same thing when I make pizza, so I do that with the bread dough. But we're going to cover that with a damp towel, and it's going to sit for another 2 hours. Yep, again, it takes a while to make this, but 2 hours later, it should look like this. And go ahead and score the middle of the bread. And yes, I know it doesn't look that great. I'm not that good at scoring. I always end up deflating the bread. Luckily, this didn't deflate, but it looks a lot better after it's baked. And I'm going to spray this with some water. And make sure you spray the whole loaf, obviously. And we're going to put both loaves into a 400-degree oven for, altogether it came out to 30 minutes, but I would check this maybe every 10 minutes and make sure you keep spraying and keep checking on it. Make sure it's not burning or drying out on you. As you can see, I'm going to continue spraying this. And halfway through, you're going to want to rotate these. And it comes out beautiful. Okay, so now to check on the ricotta. And as you can see, it's not completely dry, but as you can see, a lot of liquid came out of this. Yeah, you do not want to use that, so go ahead and pour that out. We're going to season our ricotta with some salt, some pepper. I'm using rosemary, dried rosemary. You can use fresh if you want to, or you can add any seasonings you want. This part is up to you. Add any herbs, any seasonings. I'm just going pretty plain and simple with olive oil, rosemary, salt, and pepper. And if you know me, I love rosemary. I use it in everything. Same thing with olive oil. Now, I kind of messed up on this part. Not the recipe, but recording, because I forgot to hit the record button. But we're going to be roasting some garlic. I'm just cutting it in half, adding some salt, pepper, and olive oil. And you're going to wrap that in some tin foil. And don't be shy with the seasonings or anything. This is going to come out delicious either way. And go ahead and just wrap that up tight. And we're going to put that on a little tray and put that in the oven, again, 400 degrees, for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, until it's nice and soft. Just give it a poke when you take it out, and it should come out like this. And if you've never had roasted garlic before, you are in for a real treat, because this stuff is delicious. I love to spread this on bread instead of butter sometimes. And if you're looking at this, yes, I know it's probably not the most appetizing thing to look at. But trust me, it is delicious. It's really good. It's totally... It tastes much better than it looks. So we're just going to slice an onion here, a whole medium yellow onion. And this is going to be caramelized, and we're going to put it into our garlic. And when you start to caramelize them, you're just going to use water in a cast iron pan. Honestly, you could use oil, you could use wine if you want to. I definitely recommend some white wine, but I'm just using water here, cold water, and it works just fine. It's going to steam up a lot. You're going to feel like you're cooking in a Japanese steakhouse, but it's going to smell great, and it is going to take a little while, but it should end up browning on you. Now, I didn't deeply caramelize these. I went pretty light on them and added some sugar, a little bit of sweetness with the saltiness of the cheese, and it goes together very, very well. But I kind of cooked it until it matched the color of the garlic. As you can see, I'm calling this Italian gold spread. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it, because I feel like it. But we're going to add that to our garlic. And once again, I know it's not the most appetizing thing to look at, but this smells and tastes amazing. This is what is going to make your sandwich really like a step above any ordinary ham and cheese sandwich. It is so good. And as for the cheese, besides ricotta, I'm using Swiss cheese. And make sure you buy a block of Swiss cheese. Don't use the sliced, and don't buy the pre-shredded. It's much better to shred it yourself. And this ham is some smoked Tavern ham. It is really good. Definitely recommend it. It gives it a nice smoky flavor, obviously, because it's smoked. And now it's time to assemble our sandwich. And as you can see, we're starting with the ham and then spreading on our ricotta mix. Adding the Swiss cheese. And now it's time to spread our garlic onion spread. And do not be shy with this. Be absolutely generous if you love garlic especially. And now it's time to pop this in the oven after we press it. But first we gotta brush some melted butter on top. That's gonna help this brown and also give it more of a delicious buttery flavor. Now when I press this, I put on an entire sheet pan and just press it down and try to put anything heavy that I have in the kitchen, anything that can go into an oven. So please don't use any books or, or anything like that. I'm using my cast iron pan and a brick that I covered in tin foil. And that's going to go into, again, a 400-degree oven for 20 minutes. Now, after 20 minutes, you're going to want to take out the pan, and everything that's on top of the sandwiches you're going to want to take out, but leave the sandwiches in the oven. And you're going to want to turn this to broil so that it can brown up faster. Do not take your eye off this because it browns very quickly. Mine took about a minute and a half. And they're done, so it's time for the moment of truth. And our sandwich is done. And now it's time to take a bite out of this. Looks good, doesn't it?
All right, here we are. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, no, I'm really proud of this. But seriously though, make this. It's worth the wait. The main reason why this takes so long is because of the bread, really. If it wasn't for the bread, it wouldn't take too long. Although the garlic takes a little while. And yeah, that's about it. But I would say go to the store and buy Cuban bread, but it's so much better to make it yourself. It really is. Anyway, I guess that about wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys make that. Seriously, it's really good. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'm really hoping that I get enough likes and subscribes. If I do, then I'll make another video if you guys want. Who knows, maybe I'll be lucky and maybe David Seymour will see this video and say, that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll try that. Oh, by the way, David, if you're watching, I'm a big fan. So keep doing what you're doing, alright, buddy? Anyway, guys, if there's another video, then I'll see you next time. This was just a fun project that I wanted to do, and I hope you liked it. Alright, well, see you later, and love one another. Bye.